they seem aligned, and it seems like a good group, doesn't it?
It does seem like a good group. And you do hear some stuff when you talk to people about the age and the youth and the inexperience. And I say to all those guys, I say, is that really a bad thing? Is it really a bad thing? Because new ideas, new ways to do things, that's not necessarily a bad thing when you consider they were doing things the other way and it didn't work. Yeah. It hadn't worked in a long time. And so I think it's good for this organization to have youth, have some guys that are doing things a different way. And I think it ultimately, we don't know, but ultimately I think it's a step in the right direction.
And they've got some big decisions to make pretty much immediately. Let's start with Christian Kirk. What do you think they should do?
I would go to him and say, hey, Christian, we're going to redo this contract. We're going to take the money down. Maybe we'll give you some incentives where you can earn it back. I know you like to be here. I know this is a place you like, and try and keep him that way. And if he doesn't want to do that, then I think you have to make the tough decision, and he would go out the door.
You guys both understand the whole capology part better than I do, but I understand this. He's a good player, and he is a connection point for Trevor Lawrence, and it's hard to move on from good players. I hope he's here. I passionately hope number 13 is on this football team. I think they're going to, no matter how the whole salary cap thing plays out, and again, you guys have a better feel for that than I do, they're a better football team with him on it, Pete.
Again, though, you got to look at, when you look at the big salary cap picture, you got to look at production and play time and that number. And sometimes, he hasn't been healthy.
Yeah, I know.
And so you got to look at it from that standpoint, be real about it. I think he's a good player when he's on the field, too. I know Trevor likes him. I know they're friendly. I know he likes Jacksonville. I think you can come to a happy medium if you work that contract out where you take some of that money and restructure it and give him the ability to make it back with incentives.
Do you like the Jaguar running backs, or do you think that's something, is that a sneaky need for Jacksonville?
It's a hard evaluation because of the way the offensive line is played and the way they ran the ball. I just think it's hard to evaluate Bigsby. It's hard to evaluate Etienne when you don't push anybody around. And again, I go back to the problems that they have. The offensive line is an issue. It remains an issue. You don't move people. And so if you don't move people, how do you evaluate your running backs? Go back to the Eagles. Saquon Barkley is phenomenal, right? He's phenomenal. But he averaged 4.2 per rush before he was touched. Think about that.
Right.
That doesn't happen. That hadn't happened for anybody in Jacksonville. When he was with the Giants and they didn't block very well, was he the same back he was in Philadelphia? Of course not. So fix the offensive line, then we can judge the back.
I get the impression that Philadelphia, the Eagles winning this Super Bowl was a reminder of the importance of the trenches, wasn't it? We fell so in love with the wonderful quarterback play of Patrick Mahomes for so many years and Tom Brady for so many years before that, and newcomers like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, who are such good quarterbacks, and others. But this was not that Jalen Hurts isn't a good player. He's a very good player. But this was a reminder of the trenches, wasn't it?
Absolutely. If you can protect your quarterback, block for the run game, make it easier on the quarterback, and play with the lead so your pass rush can get after the other guy's quarterback, you're going to win a lot of games. Now, it still starts with the quarterback position. It always will. But if you have those two sides of the ball and you're dominant like they've been, you're going to win a lot of football games.
Mason Graham spoke today. Do you like him if he's available at 5?
I love his game. I love the way he uses his hands, and I've watched a lot of his tape. The other defensive tackle next to him, Grant, really good, strong, physical player. But when you watch the tape, who gets doubled? Mason Graham's the one who gets doubled, and he handles it. He's not a big guy. That is a little concerning to me because I went and looked at it. I always go look at – I don't talk to him. I go look at their body. I want to see what he looks like. He's a little light, a little smallish, but he's a wrestler. And he grew up as a wrestler, so he plays with the low center of gravity. He knows how to get off blocks. It's hard to block him. But, again, there are concerns about the size, and will he hold up on a consistent basis? I love his game. I think he's phenomenal. He has hand usage like a veteran who's been in the league for 10 years.
Aaron Donald wasn't big.
No.
I mean, Chris Jones is big. Aaron Donald wasn't big.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald.
Elijah Cansey with Tampa Bay is becoming a good player, isn't big.
Correct. Great comparison. So Pete, this team, I think look, when you lose 13 games, you got a lot of problems, not one or two. But they've got to build the trenches. I think we all know that. Whether it's first or not, So how do you do it? Do you try and go find an offensive lineman in free agency? Do you try and draft your defensive tackle? And I know it's not that binary. I know it's not black and white, but big picture, how do you? Because it's more than one guy. It's both sides of the ball. How do they get that better?
Well, I think if you got a guy, let's just say they got Graham in the first round.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden you look at your defensive line, you go, wow. Because I think Mason Smith is going to be a good player.
I think he is too.
I really
too.
do. So you have that 4, and they're not old. That's not an old group. And you can get after people. If you can get after people with 4, and you're not great on the back end, you can cover a lot of things up that way. So I think getting a guy like that is important. On the offensive line, there are guys you can go. Drew Dahlman's a center. I love him. I mean, everybody I talked to, I went back and watched his tape. He got hurt last year, but he's an athletic center. He's tough. He's physical. You can get better by getting a guy like that. Or you go to the guard market. There are guys on the market, veterans on the market, who were hurt a year ago. Fries is one of them in Indy. James Daniels in Pittsburgh, good player. They've had some experience. They've played. You can get a guy like that. Then you can, if you got Graham in the first round, you could come back in the second round and get an offensive lineman. Because one thing Jacksonville's done a poor job of is drafting and develop guys that can ready to step in. When the Eagles have a guy go down, for example, Mailata went down for a while. Fred Johnson went in and played left tackle and did a nice job. You know, when the right guard gets hurt, Steen, who they drafted at Alabama, steps in and plays. You know, he's not Becked in, but he steps in and does it. Where's Jacksonville's backups? They don't develop any of them. So I think at some point in this draft, they got to draft a couple of offensive linemen for developmental reasons.
Jair Alexander, certainly on the market. If you're the Jaguars, would you be interested? And what do you think the compensation would involve?
I would be interested. I love him as a player. He's another guy that doesn't stay on the field all the time, and he has a hefty contract, so that's concerning. Campanelli probably knows him as well as anybody because he was there. Look, I like the kid. I have actually had long conversations with him. I think he's a competitive player, but there are concerns about being on the field. And he's not a big corner. And so when you're missing time because you're not a big corner, that could be concerning. But I would definitely investigate that. You get a guy like that who, more than anything, you know what he would bring to that team? He'd bring a swagger. And I can go back to the story. I was there in training camp last year. Jordan Love, his first year as a starting quarterback, he was taking over. He throws an interception. I hear a yell from the other side. Get your head out of here. It's Alexander. So I asked Jordan Love about it after the game. He goes, I respect him for that, and I love him for that. He brings up everything. And I asked Alexander about it. He goes, I love Jordan Love. He goes, but I'm going to make him play better. And that's something that Jacksonville lacked that. They lacked that. He would bring a swagger and an attitude to that defense.
Yeah, that brings edge, too. A little bit of an edge, too. Pete Prisco with us. Brought to you by Showtime Sports Cars and Collectibles, the best collectible store in town, located on Phillips Highway at the end of Shad Road. If you're a collector, you need to get to Showtime Sports Cars and Collectibles. All right, let's take a big picture. Topics here. Tush push is a topic. Kickoffs are a topic. What other topics you see? What's trending here that was around your NFL brethren?
Well, let's start with the tush push. I'm not a big fan of the play, I'll be honest with you. But after listening and talking with Nick Sirianni yesterday, and we had him on our set, and he explained the time and effort and detail they put into perfecting that play. Just because other teams can't stop it, should you outlaw it? No. So I get it. I understand it. It's not a fun play to watch. It's boring, okay? But it works. So why should you stop? Because you can't push other people and do that type of thing. So I like it. I like the idea. I don't think they'll outlaw it. I think that's just one thing thrown out there.
Kickoffs, they're talking about moving the touchback to the 35. They're talking about finding a way to make the onside kick different.
The onside kick needs to change. You got to have a surprise element to the onside kick. Otherwise, what's the reason for it? We're going to do it. Okay, we're going to do the onside kick. There's no reason to have that in the game if you're not going to allow the surprise element into it. So that will change. As far as moving it to the 35, they're trying to get more kickoffs.
Right.
You know how I feel. Just eliminate the damn kickoff and put the ball on the 30-yard line and just play football.
In terms of the Rams and Matthew Stafford, this one's puzzling to me.
Very.
I don't know why the Rams would want to move on. I know he's expensive, but, I mean, obviously there's a lot of teams. There's a report about Tom Brady and the Raiders. The Giants have an interest. Where do you think it lands with Stafford?
If you're a team that doesn't have a quarterback and you're not interested in Matt Stafford, there's something wrong with you. And if you're the Rams and you're willing to give up Matt Stafford, there's something wrong with you. I don't get it. The Rams go into Philly in the snow. He brings them back. They're within a whisker of winning that game, or at least sending over. And they're willing to move away from him for what? For $10 million maybe? Because that's, the difference of what he would get paid to what he wants. That's ridiculous. So I'm the Rams. I'm built now. I got these guys together. I got this young group together. I keep him. What do you do? What's your alternative?
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Rodgers is the conversation piece.
And
that's whether it happens or not. That's the narrative is if they move on from Matt Stafford, it's to bring in Aaron Rodgers,
who would be cheaper.
Yeah.
And look, I'll be honest with you. Aaron Rodgers, the last 6-7 weeks of the season, played good football. In talking to people around the Jets organization, he was a grade A pain in the ass. Not to the players, but like he would change plays when they were sent in, and they wanted him to run this, and he would run something else, and there was no. So I think that's a concern. They want a new culture. Sean McVay's probably strong enough in his belief that he could handle him, and it would be a lot cheaper. So from that standpoint, okay, I get it. But I think Matt Stafford's a better player right now than Aaron Rodgers. If you're the Rams, don't you think that?
Yeah, I do think it. But apparently they don't. I'm with Hayes. If you're worried about Aaron Rodgers is not going to be that cheap. He might be cheaper, but he's not going to be cheap. And I don't know that Rodgers has much left. There's times he still looks like Aaron Rodgers, but boy, there's times he doesn't.
Well, I think the injury was far worse than he let on.
And maybe that's it.
And it took him a while to get over that. He didn't move early in the season. A big part of his game is moving around, Frank. As the season wore on, the last 6-7 weeks of the season, he moved around.
Yeah.
He looked like Aaron Rodgers. But again, there's the other stuff that comes with it. And is it worth it? Here's the other thing about the teams looking at the Rams. If you're the Giants or the Raiders, does Matt Stafford make you the division favorite or even the second team in the division? Take the East. If Matt Stafford goes to the Giants, are they better than the Eagles or the Commanders?
No.
If he goes to the West, are they better than the Chargers or the Chiefs or even the Broncos, the Raiders?
No, probably not.
So what's your end game on that? Because he's only playing 3 more years probably of good football till he's 40. So what's your end game there?
Final thing. How close are the Jaguars? I've asked this. I asked it to the Jaguar brass. Going to ask it to Tony and Bucky. I'll ask you. How quickly? They're a 4-13 team. Hayes and I have had this talk every day. It just doesn't feel like to us. I'm speaking for you, Hayes. I shouldn't, but it doesn't to me, and I think Hayes agrees. It doesn't feel like they had 4-13 talent. I'm not saying they had 13-4 talent, but it felt like they were better than the record turned out to be. In your opinion, how hard will it be to fix it?
It's going to be a challenge to fix it to the point where you can compete for Super Bowls right away. But fix it to win a division, I think that's possible, and quickly. Because I thought they were better than what they were last year, too. I'm as guilty as you were. I mean, I thought they were going to be a playoff team. And I didn't think they'd win the division, but I thought they'd be a playoff team. I'm still a believer in the quarterback. And I know Liam Coen is a believer in the quarterback, and I think he's good for the quarterback. They'll run the ball better. They'll get more physical. They're not that far off. They really are not that far off. And I think if they take the right approach by fixing those lines, and they got to do both of them, the interior, those lines, and get nastier, bigger, tougher, meaner, angrier, and they do that, and that quarterback plays to what I think he can play, they can win the division.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.